So here is Unreal Engine 5 Startup Menu. First time you open up Unreal Engine, you see this window here. There are some useful menus that you can use throughout your projects. For example, here you have Load on a Startup, and you can see by default it's set to Home Panel, which is exactly this window. But you can actually change it to the most recent project. This way, every time you click on Unreal Engine, it will open up the most recent project that you are working on. Here are resources window. You can navigate through these menus and just find resources relevant to what you are doing. Next we have My Project. When you click on it, a window pops out. If you have already some projects, it will show up here. But if you don't, like me, and want to open a project, you can head over to Browse, click on it, and here you can select your project. But let me cancel that. Here we have New Project, and basically what this does is it makes a new project. So let's click on this. Here we can first choose what kind of project we want. I personally mostly use games, even though I may not be working on games at that time, but it just gives me what I need. The difference between these are some plugins are enabled or disabled by default on these projects, and it's just a matter of project settings, not much else. And as far as the project settings goes, you can, for example, enable or turn on a plugin yourself in any of these. So let's select that and let's select vehicles, why not? So here is your project location. As you can see, I have set it to where I store my project files, and here is the project name. You can call it whatever you want, but for this tutorial I'm gonna leave it as it is. And here you can select between C++ or Blueprint, which are programming languages. Blueprint is something built in Unreal Engine, and it's so powerful. If you don't know a lot about programming, I really recommend you to go with this. Let's go ahead and create.
Before we continue, if you are serious about learning Unreal Engine 5, I've got a course that walks you through the fundamentals by creating a full car animation from start to finish. We go through materials and shading, environment, lighting and HDR system, camera animation, car movement, and rendering, including techniques to get better results in less time. There's also a bonus section on editing and color grading your renders, plus helpful resources, all done with free, powerful tools. I definitely recommend you to check it out. Links in the description.
Okay, here we are. So this window here is our viewport. What is viewport is where you can see all of 3D assets, an environment or scenes of your project. You can move or navigate into your viewport by pressing down the right mouse button and using WASD on keyboard. You can see I can easily navigate through the map. It's actually pretty simple. Here you can change the speed of your camera. You can see that I'm now increasing it, and now if I try to move, I don't know, what is this? I can move a lot faster. Okay, let's set this to the default value, which is 1, and continue. Here we have Outliner. Outliner is a window that we can find any 3D or actually any asset in our viewport in here. For example, if I try to select this, you can see that I can see it here and see what name it has and where which parent object it has. Here you can see by default we have some folders that helps us organizing our project. If you want to create a folder, it's actually pretty simple. Just right click here and create a folder. Limit whatever you want, and for example, if I want to drag and drop this to here, I can do that simply, and now it's over there. The next panel, or actually the next window that we are going to talk about is the details panel. Here is a window that you can find and change any available settings for your selected object. For example, I can, this is of course a general settings. It means if I actually select this light, I still have the transform. So transform is, it's called general settings because it exists for almost any 3D or any asset in the viewport. If we come over here and press that, we have a window called Content Drawer. Any file that is existing in your project is visible from here. Okay, for example, in the content panel, content folder, I have by default the files related to the vehicles, the input, etc. I'm not gonna dive into them deeply, but just so you know that these are all about what you have in your project. Also here, like the outliner, you can actually right click and create folders and bring your assets inside of different folders to just be more organized. And if you want this window to stay up all the time, you can see if I click over there, it's gone now. You can go over here and say dock in layout. I'm not sure why it's docking it like this, but no problem. We can move it down here and it remains here all the time. Now let's have a quick overview on these tools here. So let me get closer to one of these cones here. If I select one of these and select this, I can move it, I can rotate it, and I can scale it. Let me undo that. And the parameters for over here is for controlled movement, rotation, and scale. For example, if I turn that on, actually it is already turned on, but you see that it snaps to the grid. I can turn it off from here. Now I can move it freely. So these are snap options, basically. Over here, as I already showed you, you have your camera speed control, and over here you can visualize or scene with in different modes, basically. For example, on lit shows you only the materials and the shaders, not the lighting, and while the lit is all combined. Here you have the settings related to your project quality called Viewport Scalability. Now, by default, it's set to epic, but if you want to go lower, you can. Now you can see it's like a game from 2000s. And you can go cinematic actually, which is the most high quality preset here. Let me set this to epic. Over here, you can add different assets into your project. For example, maybe a shape, which is a cube. You can do that from there. You can do actors, light, and cinematic related stuff, etc. Anything you want to add is done from this menu. Now the last thing is the window menu. For example, let's say if I accidentally have closed my outliner, I can go over the window tab and go to outliner and enable outliner 1, and you can see it comes back here. And if you have moved these around and messed up your window, you can come over here and where is it? Yeah, load layout and default editor layout. And there we go. Okay, to wrap it up, when actually let's add a shape from add menu. Let's rotate it from the tools over here and move it maybe. Let's let's create a folder and drop this into there. And let's all go over here. Actually, it's not a lot of the things that we can change right now, but let's, for example, give it a scale from here. That's all you need to know about Unreal Engine 5 UI.